Building on everything we've heard, we'll hear from another storyteller with personal experience of NATO's actions. To introduce him, please join me in welcoming NATO's Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security, Claire Hutchinson. Thank you very much.
Hello, hello, hello. Greetings, gentlewomen and gentlemen. It's lovely to see you all here today, and lovely to see so many women in the audience. So great. So I'm thrilled to be here to introduce to you the next speaker, a storyteller who has a powerful story of a journey. And for the work that we do in NATO on women, peace and security, the power of the story is very important. Because quite often in communities where women don't have education, they don't have access or opportunities, the only way they can transmit their information, their stories, their histories, their culture, is by telling stories to the next generation. And so it is that voice, a voice of empowerment that we look to in NATO. But we're flipping it because it is the story of the youth that we're going to listen to today. And a youth voice is also very important to us in NATO. As head of the Human Security Unit, this is some of the work we're looking towards in how we can get the voices of youth and we can listen to them, and listen to them a little bit better. So I'm thrilled to introduce our next speaker, who will take you through his story, which is the journey of his family. And I think you'll be as thrilled to hear his story as I have been. Because the journey, as you will all know in life, it is the journey that matters and not the destination. So please join me in welcoming our next storyteller, ARDI JANJEVA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk about what NATO means to me. I'm speaking from the point of view of someone born in this country to Kosovar parents. Now, their generation has an experience, an affiliation with NATO that's of a completely different magnitude to mine. But I can share with you today some stories which show how pieces of my identity have been shaped by the actions of NATO, whether or not I've always realized it. I can shed some light on an upbringing which never failed to make me aware of the very real meanings of words like life, liberty, and freedom. Words which, for me, a lot of the time, are translated in all too abstract and theoretical ways. And that's why I believe it's important on days like today, where NATO opens itself up and welcomes views from across the societal spectrum, that we can provide some insight into the personal. For me, this means making the voices of millions of Kosovars heard and their appreciation known. Because for our people, NATO isn't some abstract entity that meets once a year for a chat and a catch-up. NATO is the new roads and bridges built from the rubble, connecting you to the rest of your people. Once you step outside of our family home in Mitrovica, the concrete that you walk on was put there by NATO. NATO is the liberation to go on and pursue an education in your own mother tongue. The reason my parents left Kosovo in the early 1990s was because all Albanian-speaking universities were closed down. NATO is the opportunity for grandchildren to have relationships with their grandparents. My grandparents fled the war in 1999. After the first NATO bombings on March 24th, they hid for 3 more days in their house. It is only by what can be described as sheer fortune that on the 3rd day, when my grandfather peered out of his window, spotted by a Serbian sniper, that he wasn't shot there and then. On another day, with another sniper, he would have been. Within 2 minutes, dozens of soldiers turned up outside their door. And if one stroke of luck wasn't enough, how about a second? One of those soldiers, recognizing 2 of my granduncles, who were also hiding away at the time, gave them 15 minutes to escape instead of a bullet. After weeks of upheaval in the search for food and shelter, my grandfather being shot in the foot along the way, they found themselves on a bus to Montenegro. After 4 weeks in Ulcin, they and 200 others boarded a 50-capacity wooden boat sailing for Italy. With Italian soil in sight, the captain stopped the boat and informed the passengers that an unsponsored boat of over 200 people would only be turned away by the Italian authorities. So, the captain turned around to the passengers and informed them that he would now be destroying the engines just enough to be able to call for rescue by NATO forces. And so they waited, and so those forces arrived, ensuring safe passage to Italian land. As did my grandparents, arriving here in London sometime after, just a week after my 2nd birthday. So you see, I don't believe it's an exaggeration or a cliche to say that NATO means life itself. I will try and end, if I have time, with a small current affairs anecdote, which I think, a different kind of anecdote, which I think puts all of this into perspective. On Sunday, the 17th of November this year, the Kosovo national football team hosted England for a game of football. Sporting authorities have a tendency to try and keep politics out of the game, whether it be at World Cups or Olympics. Yet if ever that felt wholly inapplicable, it was that day. Growing up, there was no Kosovo football team to cheer for. I had England, and that was enough, despite all the heartbreak associated with that. But now, I have both. And I know that all the family that were crowded around our TV that Sunday felt the exact same pride. Because in 20 years, going from the brink of wipeout as a people to being part of a sporting family, battling for qualification like dozens of other countries, felt in many ways like an incredible milestone. The welcome that England received over that weekend was unprecedented. It cast my mind back to images that I'd seen after the war in '99 of NATO soldiers being showered with flowers and kisses and people crying at their feet. And fast forward 20 years, and that weekend reflected the fact that Kosovo hasn't forgotten England's role as part of NATO at the end of the last century. With these two contrasting anecdotes, I've tried to show the different faces of war, its aftermath, and NATO's role in that. What is consistent in all war-affected countries is that peace requires a relentless effort from parties all across society to make sure that we don't forget how easily it can unravel. I've been lucky enough to be born and raised in a country like this, which has given me the opportunities to speak on platforms like these and remind everyone that countries like Kosovo do not forget. Thank you for listening.